Okay, I will call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. And through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that pursuant to Section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016 is amended, that December 5th, 2023 special council meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. That the facility provided for the public to watch and view the meeting be located at Municipal Hall 380 Campbell Street in Tofino, BC. Seeing no objection, that was carried. Also through unanimous consent, if no objections, I move that the December 5th, 2023 special council meeting be adopted. Seeing no objections, that motion is carried. Mr. McCall, do we have anybody on signed up for public comment?
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now do an open call for the public for any comment on the meeting. If you wish to comment, you may state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll do an open call going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no current attendees or public comment.
Super. Then we'll move right along to item 5.1, the draft financial plan.
Thank you, Mayor Law.
Sure. And just a question, maybe for you and for councillors, is as we go through the draft financial plan, how would you like feedback or questions at the time or at periodic breaks?
Prefer at the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also, if I may, Mayor Law, if there are any councillors attending via Zoom, feel free to pipe up. I will be minimizing the Zoom window, so we might not be able to see your hands being raised, but feel free to hop off mute and come online to say.
Super. Councillor McMaster, if you have something to say, a question, just in a pause, just say, Councillor McMaster here, I have a question or comment, something like that.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Law.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Blotter. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. We're here today to present the first draft of the 2024-2028 financial plan. And I just want to take a moment to thank my colleagues and staff who have pulled this document together. It takes a village, certainly, to do this. And it's no small feat, especially with a lot of other competing priorities. And there are many staff in the background who also make this particular process move smoother and provide some, concise, great information for council in terms of the first view of the upcoming 5-year plan. So with that, I just want to take a moment to say that we'll break approximately 10:30 and then at noon. The overview of this presentation, I'll start with the budget package that council received, walk through the financial planning process and public engagement, look at the financial plan overview. We'll go into the divisional presentations and then summarize with next steps. The budget package that council received includes a detailed line by line of the draft financial plan. They also received a consolidated or a summary of the revenues and expenditures by program, or what we call a consolidated budget look. There was also a project summary of all of the operating and capital projects, which includes the by funding source as well as project status. And then we've got the detailed project sheets as well included in that package. So the financial planning process, local governments must annually adopt a 5-year financial plan in accordance with the Local Government Act and the Community Charter. Key features of this plan include projects and expenditures that are in line with Council's strategic plan. And we are using Council's existing strategic plan, and project sheets will be updated with Council's new plan down the road. In addition, this financial plan must be balanced. Public engagement, objectives of communication to the public is to increase the public confidence in the district's responsible management of tax dollars, increase awareness of how tax dollars are allocated, generate some participation in this process, and support responsiveness to mitigate concerns and address any issues. So prior to adopting the financial plan, a local government must undergo this public consultation and engagement, have an opportunity for the community to learn about the process, review the proposed projects that staff is putting forward, and submit any questions or comments and ask questions. We have a site for 2024 public engagement under talktofino.ca. And if any questions can be emailed to the budget@tofino.ca email address. I presented a 2024 to 2028 financial planning calendar. Here we are, the December 5th first special budget meeting on December 13th next week. From 6 to 8 p.m. on December 13th, we'll hold our first public engagement here in council chambers. This will be an opportunity for community to discuss the draft plan. Council and district staff will be available to answer any questions. February 15th, 2024, we're planning our second special budget meeting. And a second public engagement will be held that month as well. Dates to be determined, and we'll work closely with council to establish that date. In March of 2024, we're planning a third special budget meeting. This will likely be necessary based on what's still outstanding at the time, as well as introducing the revised assessment roles expected to be received from BC Assessment in late March. And then finally, we'll wrap it up likely in late March or early April, the 2024 to 2028 financial plan bylaw and the 2024 tax rate bylaw, all to be adopted prior to May 15th of 2024. So for the overview, I'm going to walk through the financial planning and best practices that we employ pulling this document together, cost drivers, fees and charges, some updates on grants, as well as a summary on our debt servicing and assessment, BC assessment values, including non-market change. So in terms of financial planning and best practice, we employ collaboration in pulling together this document. All divisions are reviewing prior year trends and current year results to establish the requests for the 2024 budgets. Submissions have been discussed with our entire management team back in September. We also employ a service level approach where we prepare the budget to deliver services at the standard directed by council. So if there have been any changes or council directs a change in this service level, this would be incorporated into this document. There would be no changes unless directed by council or external regulation. So external regulation, if there are any legislative changes or directions from the ministry in terms of changing the way we deploy some of our services. We also strive to fund and deliver services in the most cost-effective manner. In terms of aligning funding sources, we try to use predictable, stable, for predictable, stable, and ongoing expenditures. We try to match those with predictable, stable revenues such as property taxes, and user fees. When it comes to more infrequent or volatile, less predictable type of expenditures, we tend to fund those using contingencies, reserves, or debt. Carryover project budgets, 2023 projects are underway. But for those that are not complete as of December 31st, these will continue. Operations do not pause while adopting a 5-year new financial plan. And funds used to balance the 2024 budget, we typically reassign any unused 2023 budgets that have been funded by taxation and user fees. And this reassignment must be made to similar or the same budget requirements and only available for 1 year carryover. And we also use prior year surpluses as well to balance. I'm going to note that this presentation currently is not balanced, but we will bring a balanced budget back to council on the February 15th presentation. So our user or for our fees and charges, we've got a water and sewer fee increase as of January 1st, 2024 of 4% inflation. That was approved by council or adopted by council in June 13th, 2023, as part of the amendment bylaws. As well, there's an ongoing rate review of these fees that is expected to amend rates as of April 1st of 2024. This rate review will analyze current operational needs in both the water and sewer funds and ensure that the utility rates are appropriately funding district activities. Additional considerations include equity between classes, water conservation, and other potential areas of interest that are currently being determined by the working group doing this rate review. An analysis of fees and charges are also, an analysis of fees and charges related to planning services will be discussed at the second budget presentation. So we received a Growing Communities Fund grant of $1.9 million in on March 31st of 2023. It was a new one-time grant that we will continue to defer until spent. The objective of this grant was to increase local housing supply through investments in infrastructure and amenities. The principal objectives of this grant was to increase, I said that, I apologize, I was repeating myself. Examples of eligible costs for this grant are public drinking water supply, treatment facilities, and water distribution, local portion of affordable or attainable housing developments, recreation-related amenities, or improvements that facilitate transit service. I've got a list of grant conditions. One of them is to place this funds in a segregated reserve fund established by bylaw, and we will be bringing that reserve bylaw to the December 12th meeting.
I have a question about this, Bonner. I was actually hoping that 50% of this Growing Communities grant would be able to be reserved for the recreation center, which would fit also the grant application. So how does council interject if council wants to make a point of this? I mean, we have reserve funds for infrastructure and water, etc., through taxes and levies, but we don't have for the recreation center. So I think personally, I would say this is a good chance to build up funds for a recreation center outside of taxation or fees and levies. So that's my interjection.
Thank you, Mayor Law. Yes, definitely council has an opportunity to weigh in on how to utilize these funds. The current allocation to the Bay Street water treatment upgrade is a recommendation from staff. Just want to remind this particular project will be discussed later in the presentation by Mr. Rogers, and we have been previously unsuccessful in obtaining grant funds for this particular important project for our water.
So we can just to interject again, we can take that conversation to Mr. Rogers.
Absolutely. Or now, whichever.
There. That's great.
So in this budget, I'm just going to highlight some cost drivers and budget risks. We see for cost drivers, we see our employee benefit premiums increasing in this particular plan. We are part of a large group of municipalities that share in reduced benefits costs because of that purchasing power. And that's really helped us up to this particular year. But all of the different benefit aspects are showing some significant inflationary increases. Dental fees are increasing by 6% by the Dental Association of BC. We've got some rates increased on our life and long-term disability and short-term disability benefits that we benefited from early in 2019 due to some good marketing by the providers, but now that's been removed. So we're seeing some increases there. We continue to see realize some increases in our various insurance premiums, but continue to work on ensuring that our property appraisals are up to date, which help to establish some stable and predictable premiums there. Infrastructure replacement, ongoing work there. We still see some volatility when it comes to our fuel requirements. And of course, interest rates. I've got a slide later in our presentation regarding our debt as well. So we'll discuss that at that point. In terms of budget risks, our QP contract expires May 1st of 2024. And contract negotiations are expected to begin in early February. So wages outside of inflation are considered a budget risk. So we've included inflationary rates or increases there. But anything outside of that would be a risk to this budget. As well as cost of travel, we're saying that we've included some budget increases that I'll walk through a bit later, but we're showing this as a budget risk but we'll undertake to control that budget by revisiting it and establishing internal policies around travel during periods of high inflation. So in order to mitigate these risks, we attempt to consolidate projects where possible. Consolidation will reduce staffing resources, the need for staffing resources, as well as potentially reduce any mobilization or demobilization costs. We're still working with canoe procurement group on those kinds of strategies for common goods and services. And we also are working on establishing or maintaining cost agreements for significant budgets, including legal fees, audit fees, information technology. Although in this presentation, there is no change in that particular budget, I am bringing forth a report to council next week on the 12th with a contract award and a request for early budget approval on that particular service. We also attempt to work closely to manage costs for telephones and cell phones, and engineering fees are examples of those types of strategies we work for the bigger budgets. So this particular plan in the general fund, we're showing a 4.08 tax increase on our base level inflation or base level taxation. This was established in the 2023 to 2027 financial plan. And we'll update that plan as the change from our prior year. Our capital infrastructure levy at $1.9 million will be adjusted for inflation. I mentioned earlier that our draft financial plan presented today is not balanced, and that I'll be discussing the assessment values and non-market change, although they'll be subject to change with our revised or a final assessment rule expected in late March. Debt servicing. So we've got the fire department duty truck that's been on the books for a while, and we've got some small balances remaining there. This particular slide, I'll back up a minute, shows the estimated principal outstanding as of December 31, 23 with our estimated 2024 payments. On our water upgrades, we've got a debt there that matures in April of 2031, estimated ending balance of just over $500,000 with payments in 2024 at $49,000. We've got an Ocean Park renovation borrowing there that's due in February 2028, currently sitting at nearly $223,799 with estimated payments in 2024 of $51,000. And our wastewater treatment plant, in our Q3 update to council, we discussed the amount of borrowing that the borrowing would represent the District of Tofino's 26.67% contribution to that project. And at December 31st, 2023, we're estimating that to be close to $12 million. So that's eligible and ineligible costs. And in terms of borrowing, we're currently, we would not be locking in until the fall of 2024. So our temporary borrowing costs are estimated at $488,000 at this point in time using current interest rates. And our long-term borrowing, if in fact we received our long-term borrowing in late or starting in Q4 of 2024, I'm estimating that based on, again, our current 10-year borrowing rate of 4.55%, that would equate to $182,000 in 2024. So total borrowing debt servicing costs in 2024 of $670,000. We have a debt servicing reserve here. Our opening balance as of January 1, 2023 is $353,000. We've got contributions from the MRDT report, specifically for the wastewater treatment plant of $400,000 received this year. Our interest earned to the end of October was nearly $15,000. So we've got a projected balance before transfers out of $768,000. And we haven't used as much as we anticipated in our 2023 borrowing. So we'll have more to carry over into 2024. Non-market change. So this particular slide presents the 2024 assessment based on the completed roll. So there's a breakdown of the assessment values by property class. 2024 completed roll of $2.1 billion. Change, our 2023 revised roll was just a little over $2 billion. The non-market change for 2024 is estimated at $35 million, a little over $35 million, nearly $36 million, primarily in the residential class. And I put a reminder there of what we showed in terms of non-market change for 2023. So our non-market change, or the percentage change due to non-market, equates to 1.77% over our 2023 revised assessment roll. Is there any questions on that particular slide? Okay, really quickly going. So I'm going into corporate services division and starting with the financial services overview, financial services. And these particular slides that you'll see throughout our presentation, we're not going to go into any detail with, but we're maintaining them in the presentation because they'll be part of the Talk Tofino public view. So this provides some context for public looking at these presentations. So the operating budget for the administrative services, this is a bit different presentation for council than we've had in prior years. We're showing a summary of the 2023 actuals, which we presented to council in Q3. We're showing the 2024 adopted budget, and this was part of the 2023 to 2027 financial plan. That's what we consider the adopted budget. The 2024 proposed budget is what we're preparing for presenting to you today. And then any change in those budgets in terms of a dollar and then a percentage. So for the administrative revenues, we're showing an increase in revenues of $126,000. And that's primarily due to higher interest rates earned on our investments. We're realizing that. And then down into the expenditure section, the staffing office and administrative, there's an increase in budget of 38,837. And that's related to higher, the major changes due to higher training and travel costs, of which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. We will be revisiting these budgets for the second draft to council. So that is a quick summary of the, and I'm sorry, back up a step there. The information technology budget, I'm not showing an increase over the adopted at this point. Again, I'm presenting a report to council next week, which will detail the request and the early adoption. In terms of the operating revenues, the Community Works Fund, or what we used to call the gas tax, or still call the gas tax, this particular agreement is ending. This is the currently called the 10-year Canada Community Building Fund, and we received the final payment actually this month. The UBCM anticipates implementation of a new agreement in April of 2024. However, we'll be using for this financial plan, we are using the 2023 agreement to forecast over the next 5 years. And it would be a slight risk to this plan if that agreement doesn't come out at least the same or more. In terms of administration fees, these represent 10% of the water and sewer charges. That's no change over how we've managed that in the past. Small Communities Grant, this is an unconditional grant to reduce inflation available to small communities, and you can see how that progresses over the next 5 years. And then our interest rate, interest revenue on investments, we are showing some large increases there, and that we may, in the second draft, especially if interest rates do fluctuate, we would relook at those particular revenue levels. For legislative services, council's operating budget, we under council initiatives, I'll go back, that there's no change in benefits or the indemnities budgets for council. Council initiatives, we are showing a $10,000 increase. This was a referral from council, a referral to the budget from council regarding, I knew this, I'm sorry. I'll come back to that particular one. Laura, can you look in my,
Sorry, what do you mean?
I just wanted to give council a reminder of what that particular $10,000 increase was for.
Oh yeah, that's related to one of the items that was referred to the budget council. To the budget process for the community.
Connective Support Society requested a $10,000 commitment. Yeah, I had more details on that particular one. Council I can come back to this item if.
So just council initiatives. That doesn't have anything to do with council's request for increased funding for travel.
That'll be in the council expenses line.
It appears that council expenses has gone down from the adopted budget.
Yes.
Why is that?
We did that particular decrease of $3,625 relates to it was included in the future years for the theater rental, because both theater and the council chambers are undergoing renovations in 2024. We'll be moving to the community hall for council meetings. In terms of the advocacy, the changes that we discussed with council, no changes have been made in this particular discussion, but we will update the second draft to council. In terms of that council initiative, which and the council grant, That was an Arts and Culture Committee had requested an increase to $40,000 in 2024, which was referred to the budget process and was reflected in this overview. So overall, in expenses, there's a $20,000 increase in expenses and a net from property taxation increase of $18,000. And again, we'll come back to on the second draft with the advocacy increase in council's expenses. Any questions before we proceed on any of that? Oh, I knew I had another slide. There it is. So the Connective Support Society Council received a presentation in December 5th of 2022. And this was an annual contribution request of $10,000. And then the November 14th meeting of regular council, there was a request to increase that particular grant to $40,000. That's it for my particular portion of this presentation, and I move on to community services for her update.
Thank you.
Mayor Law, I just have one additional comment. It's Nyla here.
So managers are presenting their sections, and I think the first one up is community programs.
Nyla just piped up saying she has something to say,
Yeah.
but it's just coming up on the computer, so I don't know if anybody else heard it.
I'm gonna switch on. Second, Nyla.
No problem.
Hopefully Duncan had no comments throughout that.
We would have heard it for sure. over here, yeah.
Okay, Nyla, do you want to try again?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to comment on the referrals to the budget process. This is an opportunity for Council to have a discussion regarding the two items that were referred. We've included them in the financial plan, but staff would like to know if we should continue to have those in. So there were the council grant or the arts and culture grants, as well as the events grants, which show up in a different section of the budget, will be increased to $40,000 and will remain in the financial plan draft unless council would like us to have a closer look at that, or if there's a more thorough discussion council would like to have. And in addition, the $10,000 that was requested is also up for discussion. So I don't know if now it would be an opportunity for council to talk about that, or if you wanted it to come back at the end of the presentation once you see the budget in its entirety.
Councilors?
I'm happy to wait until the end.
I prefer to wait till the end until we get a whole view of the budget and maybe be able to juggle some things at the end if we need to.
Okay, I'll maybe just ask Ms. Bodnar to make a note to bring that slide up again at the end of the presentation.
Councilor McMaster, comments?
I'd agree with that. I'd rather see the full budget, and then, you know, if we have to make some changes, which usually means cuts, then we can look at various things again.
Super.
We need to note as we go through put aside all those discussion points. Make a little list. If there's other ones we can.
Super. So councilors, if you find something in the budget that you would like to discuss later, don't get a chance to, please make a note and we will have a fulsome discussion at the end of all points outstanding.
If I may, the end of this particular meeting, or would you like to have that discussion brought forward to the second?
At this meeting.
This meeting.
Yeah, I think staff are looking for direction from council at this meeting. I think that's appropriate.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So I will be presenting on part of the community services is the community programs section. So just as a brief overview, community services includes community programs, planning services, and the Tofino Volunteer Fire Department. So community programs, within community programs is recreation, childcare, and arts and culture. So under arts and culture, the culture and events programmer supports the district's cultural programs and programs, including public art. And they support the planning, development, and implementation of visitor-related programs and services, including events, arts, and filming on location. This area is, so the expenses related to the culture and events program are partially funded by RMI and will be discussed later in the presentation by Mr. Dick. Zipping along to the Community Children's Center. So the Community Children's Center is our childcare center that is licensed for up to 18 children, age 30 months to school age. We currently have 3 full-time staff, and our operation hours are 8:30 till 5 p.m. Although we are currently reduced down to 4 p.m. just due to staffing levels. So looking at the operating budget for the Children's Center, one piece to really note out of this, the grants and donations. So the Community Children's Center is supported through our participation in the childcare operating funding program through the province of British Columbia. And this helps supports with numerous programs, including the childcare fee reduction initiative, ECE wage enhancement program, and then also childcare operating funding to help support the center itself. So part of that grants and donations is the ECE wage enhancement program, where the province will be increasing the payment for qualified ECEs in 2024 from $4 per hour to $6 per hour, which is a huge win for that sector. We also are participating or applying to the BC Employer Training Grant Program, and this is helping us with training staff into the ECEA and ECE roles. And so this is a program through the province that covers 80% of eligible training costs, and then we cover the remaining 20%. So we do apply for a substantial amount through that program. Yes.
Is there is there also a fee reduction grant? I know they've talked about the $10 a day daycare type applications. Is that ongoing or is that not? Is that over?
No, so through the childcare operating funding program, we have the childcare fee reduction initiative, and that is a fee reduction off of every parent's bill, no matter their situation. And then parents can apply for an additional program called the Affordable Childcare Benefit, which is based on their financial picture. But the childcare fee reduction initiative is up to $900 off of a bill per month for children aged 30 to 36 months. And then $450, I believe, is the maximum amount for children 3 years to school age per month. And that's based on how many days they attend and what their if they're part-time or full-time.
Super.
Yeah. So a few of the operating budget highlights that I had mentioned, the ECE wage enhancement program. So this will see an increase of $6 per hour in 2024. And that is for certified early childhood educators. And then the BC Employer Training Grant, which I had mentioned as well. And this is an 80-20 split with the province through that granting program. And I think that is all for the Children's Center. Moving on to recreation. So recreation, obviously we offer recreational programs to the community for all ages. And we base our programming on a seasonal rotation. And most of our programs are held at the Tofino Community Hall, but we do also utilize other venues around town, as well as our outdoor spaces. So most of our operating budget with the program, the revenue and expenses for programming generally meet a 80-20 split. So we, the program or the instructor receives 80% of the fees and we take 20%. So those generally will reflect one another. However, this year we are applying for a seniors New Horizon grant. And so that is a big chunk of the grants, donations and contributions amount. And that is a grant for 25,000. So that will increase our expenses and reflect that on the other side. And oops. Move that over. We also do, the recreation team and I do continue to also look for additional programming grants because this ultimately helps reduce the program expense on the other side. And then the last one there to note is the gym program expense, and that is what was budgeted for school, Wickenham School gymnasium access. And that is just a carryover from the 2023 to 2027 budget. So as mentioned, usually the revenues do reflect the expenses for the programs that we offer and will fluctuate based on enrollment and how many people we get signed up for those programs. And next, you'll all be familiar with this one. This is the community recreation facility, which was presented or approved in the 2023 to 2027 financial plan. We will likely have an updated timeline based on whether this grant is received. I think it's the green infrastructure.
Green and inclusive.
Green and inclusive, there we go. Is currently still being reviewed. So we're hoping to hear back from that one shortly. And then just a couple other projects that are being planned or looked at under community programs is community hall upgrades to the kitchen and foyer space and Monks Point cultural workspace. We're just seeking a few more details on both of these projects before we present them to council at the next budget. Yeah, and also seeking grants for both of those as well. Any questions?
Super.
No? Okay.
Thanks.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Mr. Dick.
I will be presenting the operating budgets for the various sections of the Planning Services Department. Planning Services is responsible for not just planning, as the name implies, but also bylaw services, building inspection, some RMI programs, as well as emergency planning. So I'll talk through the operating budgets for each of those sections of the overall department. Taking a look to start with that planning services, this is probably the largest operating budget within the department. We are largely funded by taxation, though we do have some revenue from development applications, as well as grants, donations, and contributions. The one kind of highlight I want to point out on this particular slide is there's a fairly large difference between the 2024 adopted budget and the 2024 proposed budget for grants, donations, contributions. That has to do with the Housing Accelerator Fund that Council is aware of. I'll touch on that in the next slide or two as well. Taking a quick look at some highlights. As I noted, there's some varying expenses year to year, largely based on plans and strategies and projects that are scheduled, varying revenues as well based on the actual development projects that may happen in town, the amount of applications that we receive. One of the things that we did want to point out, or the two things that seemed relevant at this point, would be the implementation of the PSD citywide software. That's something that we're actually still in contract negotiations for. It's a large software package that has various modules being implemented in different parts of the organization currently. And then as well, the 2023 Housing Accelerator Fund grants. We are still waiting to hear back on whether if we were successful or not in that application. That's a fairly significant fund, about $2.6 million over the course of a few years. So it has a fairly large impact on the numbers within our budgets. Whether or not that grant comes through in the amount that we're expecting or comes through at all remains to be seen. Our last conversation, or I guess communication with CMHC about that was a few days ago, and they're still analyzing various applications, hopefully making an announcement in the next little while, but I would not anticipate hearing back until the new year at this point. So these are some of the upcoming projects that are currently on the docket for the Planning Services Department. Zoning bylaw update. This is something that's been spoken somewhat informally about in various council meetings. It's begun. However, the large portion of the funding for it has been pushed into the 2024 year, largely because I was away for most of this year and unable to participate in that project. I will have a report bringing for council's review on the December 12th agenda. So there'll be a little bit more conversation around what that project's looking like and largely kind of timelines and milestones for that project over the next year and a half or so. The environmental sensitive areas report is a continuation of some work that's already been happening since actually 2022. It's a request of $15,000 a year. It started this year, 2023, and will continue into 2024 and 2025, largely focused on mapping and ground truthing our riparian areas within the boundaries of the District of Tofino to inform things like a tree protection bylaw, our riparian development permit area guidelines, and overall development patterns for the community in line with our ecological values. The municipal forest strategy is closely tied to this one. It was initially scheduled for 2024. It's being pushed to 2025, largely because we haven't completed our tree protection bylaw, which was hopefully going to happen this year, but will be begun next year, largely again because I was away for a good portion of the year. Our integrated community sustainability plan refresh. This is our vision to action. That's scheduled for 2025. And this is something we haven't taken a look at for quite a while. The B2A is over a decade old at this point. And so this is something that we'll be looking at kind of engaging with the community in. And it's, again, a very high level, fairly aspirational document, but an important kind of sets the overall tone of all the other things that we do underneath that within the community. Housing Accelerator Fund, I touched on this. It's a fairly significant grant coming in over the next couple of years. Whether we're successful in that, we'll see, but that will be a significant amount of work, largely for the senior planner over the next couple of years. Mobile population census, we've been, again, negotiating with the provider for this. We're looking to enter into a contract in the next couple of days. This is just generally an understanding, gives us a bit of a better understanding of our population so we can hopefully better understand what kind of developments we need and also impacts on infrastructure and various services that the district provides. So that's something that we're looking to do, kind of have it's already been approved for the 2023 year, and then we'll be looking to update that information in 2025. Housing Needs Assessment Report, I believe this one's scheduled for 2026, as well as the OCP update. Those are both 2026 projects. The HNA, the Housing Needs Assessment, is a provincially mandated project, so we're anticipating some grants being announced in the lead up to that particular project, but it is something that we need to refresh every 5 years, so that's a fairly time-sensitive one. And the official community plan update, this won't be a large rewrite, similar to what we went through a couple of years ago, but this will largely be us, taking a look at how we're doing in terms of what we're hoping to do through our OCP and making adjustments as necessary. Moving onwards, are there any questions from council?
Just a clarification, it's not going to be a full OCP rewrite, it's just a review.
I hope so. Yes, is the answer to that question. So we won't be looking to kind of start from scratch. We'll be looking at our existing policies and making adjustments as necessary. Moving onwards to building inspection. Building inspection is largely funded by building permit revenue. It's increased a little bit from taxation from 2023, largely because our building inspector is no longer under contract to the District of Tofino. However, we do have an informal agreement. We're looking to formalize that agreement where if the District of Tofino does require additional assistance moving forward, our building inspector will be heading down there to help out, perhaps for particular projects or for some coverage if their building inspector is away. And at that point, we will be looking to hopefully gain some revenue back from the District of Tofino to cover some of those costs of net property taxation. It's also important to note that our building permit revenue fluctuates quite a bit. The $110,000 that's noted in that line item is an estimate. It's based on previous years, but it may be up or down, kind of depending a little bit on the applications that come through the door. So some of the operating budget highlights here is, again, like I noted, we're no longer under contract with the District of Tofino, so that increases our draw from taxation dollars a little bit more for this particular service. And we are still operating the step code rebate program. These are funds that are transferred from a reserve, and they are largely to support or incentivize the development of energy efficient buildings. You get a little bit of a refund if you meet particular step codes within the BC Building Code for greater energy efficiency in your construction. Does anybody have any questions about building inspection? So moving forward to emergency planning, again, largely a taxation funded section of the department. However, we do rely fairly heavily on grants and donations, particularly for provincially mandated projects, of which there are a couple coming up. So taking a quick look at some of the upcoming projects, the two top bullets are scheduled for 2024. So this is the Community Recovery Framework, and the Emergency Program Strategic Plan. These are provincially mandated projects. I don't know if there are any grant opportunities for these projects at this point in time, but that's something that we'll be looking out for. These are existing plans within the District of Tofino's program. However, we are obliged to update them fairly regularly to ensure that we are meeting provincial requirements. It's also worth noting that these were scheduled, I believe, for 2023, but being rescheduled for 2024 as the Emergency Program Act was significantly updated, as the provincial legislation was significantly updated, but not finalized until close to the end of this year. So we actually didn't have time to understand exactly what they were asking for, and then as well, kind of bring it into account. So there's a certain grace period where we're still operating under the previous legislation moving forward, and we'll be looking to initiate these projects early in the new year to ensure that we come into alignment with the updated legislation. The Coastal Flooding and Tsunami Inundation and the Tsunami Risk Mitigation Review are both scheduled for 2025. These are closely related projects, but we're essentially looking to update our information as what our risk is for coastal flooding and tsunami inundation, and also look to mitigate the risk associated with those incidents. So are there any questions about these projects at this point? Moving along to our friends at the Bylaw Services section. I'm not really sure what to call them exactly, but they're another segment within the Planning Services Department. This section largely focuses on business licensing, as well as bylaw education and enforcement. Taking a look at the operating budget, there's been a little bit of a decrease of the property taxation. Largely that was due to a bit of a restructuring of the organization. The Bylaw Services Department used to be kind of under the Protective Services Department. However, they've come under Planning Services as well. So that's reduced staffing costs a little bit, as well as a few other aspects of that reorganization. Sorry, and there's actually no projects associated with this similar to the section. So are there any questions related to Bylaw Services at this point? Right. Along to the Resort Municipality Initiative. So the RMI program, this is a provincially funded program that really supports small tourism-based municipalities such as ourselves. And it's a good chunk of money that we get from the province. However, there are a number of strings attached. This money is intended to build and diversify tourism infrastructure, or somehow be related to delivering visitor experiences or improving the general area for tourism, as it is the significant economic driver in this particular area. So Tofino has been a resort municipality since 2008. We have a base amount that we get, and then we have kind of a performance lift that's associated with the MRTT, the level of MRTT that's received by the province. And we do have a resort development strategy that outlines general projects and expenditures leading into the next year. Taking a look at the operating budget here, there's very little from property taxation. However, there's a little bit that's associated there. There's not too many major changes between the adopted budget and the proposed budget here. There's a little bit of change in the staffing cost there, but that's associated with some of the structural reorganizations. That staffing is associated with two roles here at the District of Tofino, both the Planning Services Project Coordinator, I believe is the title, as well as the Culture and Events Programmer. So that funding goes to cover both of those positions.
So just to clarify that, that's with the restructuring, basically takes the expenses, it adds the expenses to this, but from another.
That's correct. Yeah. So because RMI budget is a little bit separate. Essentially, the Culture and Events Program is under the Community Program section. I'm sorry, I forgot what Ms. Hutchinson's section is called or department is called. And the RMI Project Coordinator is under the Planning Services Department. This just happens to be the budget for both of those positions. So taking a look at the operating budget highlights, I believe I spoke about a few of these things already. But there's, project expenses are finalized following the annual audit in March. So a lot of the projects that are moving forward, the capital projects that are associated with RMI funding, we're kind of anticipating what they're going to be anticipating, what the costs are going to be, but all these things will be finalized in the new year. There's an annual contribution to the Public Art Reserve, and then the other capital project that happens almost every year is the 2024 Tofino Seasonal Shuttle, scheduled to run from mid-June to mid-September coming up. It will follow the same route that has already been established. So this is heading out to Tla-o-qui-aht and Nesawista, as well as the Cox Bay and other routes within town. And I believe that the contribution from RMI to that is about $250,000 or $245,000 with $5,000 contribution from tourism. So some of the other projects that are being proposed right now, this is the First Street Dock sidewalk access. Largely, this has come out of conversations with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation and ensuring that there's adequate access from the First Street Dock up into the main kind of downtown area. So there's a fairly significant budget here. This will look to redo some sidewalks as well as some other pedestrian infrastructure along that block to ensure that there's safe and adequate access for anybody who wants to use it, but particularly members of our offshore communities who come to access services within the community. Multi-use path upgrades. This is kind of continuing on along various other upgrades to the multi-use path that have been happening over the last couple of years. There's sort of two sections that are being proposed currently. One is between Sharp Road and Mackenzie Creek. That's, I guess, just on the other side of the outside break commercial area. So this will be moving in front of what is the Dolphin Motel currently. That section has been mentioned numerous times by the public as being a little bit dicey and needing to be replaced. And so we'll be looking at replacing that section, prioritizing that. There'll also be another 100 lineal meters south of the visitor center, kind of across the street from the public access to Cox Bay to improve some of that area. There was some initial plans to continue moving forward through parts of South Tofino based on where we most recently left off. That's kind of the section heading out towards Tree Frog Lane on the side of the highway. However, as that section of the multi-use path is actually still in fairly good repair, that's been pushed to a later date, and we're trying to focus on the areas that have been noted as problems. North Cox Bay Beach access ramp. So this is the public access that runs between 1431 as well as Long Beach Lodge. It's often the access from the end of the trail down onto the beach deteriorates quite quickly. So we'll be looking to put a bit more of a permanent access ramp in there. There'll have to be some background studies largely around ensuring that we have the right access ramp, the right design, so we're not causing significant issues to the beach through this. So there's a budget of $100,000 to kind of incorporate all those aspects of the project. But it will be largely a engineered and designed concrete ramp to ensure that we have year-round comfortable access down to the beach from that trailhead. South Tonquin Trail upgrades. This is associated with the replacement of the bridge there that was needing to be replaced at this point in time. With the replacement of the bridge, we'll likely be able to get our public works crews over with slightly larger machines to actually do some more significant maintenance on that trail in sections that are very needed. So this budget request from RMI is not associated with the bridge replacement that's already underway. That contract has been signed. The work has not commenced yet as we've missed the fish window. So we are waiting until the spring in order to actually do that work. Once that work is completed, we'll be able to tap into this funding in order to maintain and update certain aspects of the trail that are necessary at this point in time. And this is a this slide didn't quite come out the same as the other ones, but largely there's a design in place for the future phases of Campbell Street, moving down towards the co-op and towards the north end of Campbell Street, or I guess more west end of Campbell Street. At this point in time, we're kind of waiting to see. This is a very funding dependent kind of project, so we're waiting to see what our my budget actually comes out to in the new year, and so we'll probably have some more information for council at the subsequent budget presentation about this one. But we're waiting on some funding information to understand what this might look like, how far we might be able to go, if it's feasible, those kinds of things. And at this point, I think I'll be passing it over to the Director of Community Services to talk about the Tofino Volunteer Fire Department, unless there are no more questions or any questions.
I had a comment.
Yeah, please.
Just a quick comment about the concrete ramp.
Yeah.
I think the design and investigation stage would be really important, just my opinion. I've rarely seen a concrete structure work on a sandy beach. So that's my initial it's like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I thank you for the comment, Mayor Law. I think that's something that we've been considering and looking to get a geotechnical engineer, some other kind of coastal professional, for lack of a better term, to understand the impacts of that. We all are aware of the, kind of the various rock walls that are on the couple of beaches in town, and sometimes those fail, which is not great. And so we'll be looking to ensure that doesn't happen in this particular situation. Thanks for the comment. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thick. So just a few slides. Emily is away. Fire department overview. Council seen this recently through the Q3 presentation, so I think this is understood. Operating budget, no significant variance there. A slight increase for firefighter expenses of about $1,000, but very similar to what was already adopted in the 2024 budget. Highlights of the operating budget are a tool replacement project, which is funding dependent. I think there's a slide coming up on that. Already approved through the budget were two fairly significant projects for the department, which is the purchase of an air filling station, which will allow the department to fill their SCBA tanks on site rather than waking up a local business owner in the middle of the night and hoping they come to the rescue. And a purchase of new tanks as well to replace the tanks that are currently 20 years old, over 20 years old. And this has been previously approved. Well, maybe there isn't a problem there. No, I'm going to go back to this one then here. So the grant, council did pass a resolution supporting this grant. This is the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. So this project is fully funded by grant or grant dependent for the replacement of various tools that the department uses, chainsaws, that type of thing. And project planning, so further details to come at an upcoming budget presentation. One, we're just doing some site planning around the fire training ground, and should have some more information around project planning for that in 2024 at the next budget meeting. Also, fire hall seismic upgrades, past condition assessments of the existing fire hall do indicate that building would not be in good shape post disaster. And of course, those are our emergency responders. And if we can't get the trucks out of the hall, that would be a problem. So looking to dig into those condition assessments a little more and come up with some cost estimates around what could be done to bring the building into better repair and put some numbers around that so we can present that to council and make some decisions. And that is all for fire department. If there are no further questions, I will turn it over to Director of Infrastructure and Public Works.
It's treat time.
It is. Okay.
5-minute recess? Or would you like a 10-minute recess? How are we doing for time? Seems like we're flying.
Yeah.
10 minutes. We're gonna get 10-minute recess. Let's reconvene at 10:15. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'll be presenting the Infrastructure and Public Works budgets. When we move into the projects, I'll provide a fairly high level overview. And then if we have any really detailed questions that I may struggle with, we also have Mr. Kirkland on the team's portion of the meeting as well. So if you want to dig down to some of those projects, we can. Again, I think we're all familiar, but we are Infrastructure and Public Works. We manage the infrastructure functions of the municipality. Our public works team manages or operates all of our systems. And then we have a number of other responsibilities that we address as needed through council and CAO direction. So we're going to start with the paid parking program. Just a quick heads up that this is going to be a fairly broad conversation. I do have some detailed notes here and I can access my computer for more detailed questions. My hope is that I can present this in its fullness after Q4. So once we've had the whole year run through and I know exactly what's happening, so I can today provide some projections. I have a pretty good idea of where we're headed with the pay parking program, but would like to hear council's feedback on what we provide today, and then we'll drill down to it after the Q4 numbers come in. So the operating budget update for parking. The good news is that we will be transferring about $250,000 into reserve accounts based on council's previous direction at the end of the year. So looking forward, we know that's the round number. Overall, we generated about $700,000 in revenue through both programs and had expenses in and around the range of $450,000 to $460,000. The beach parking program was successful again. We had fewer people parking at the beach, but because our rates were higher, we basically met our goals for this year in the finance plan, and we're very similar to last year's numbers. Downtown parking was a different story. Our revenues did not meet our expectations, and our expenses were higher than we expected. The expense section was related to some issues we had with our formulas in the previous financial plan from 2022, and so we've adjusted that for the 24 to 28 budget presentation. We'll have one of the reasons we're waiting until the next version is once I have the real numbers, I can start plugging those into the budget and give council a pretty accurate idea of what we're going to do. So in terms of downtown parking, we saw fewer revenues based on the fact we had fewer spaces than we expected due to construction in the community, the shorter season due to the road closure, and a fairly low, I would call it, introductory rate for parking. And so those three items we will plan to address for next year. And then in terms of expenses, the new contract was a one-year contract to help us line up with the beach parking contract. And what that meant is that we had to front end a lot of the equipment. So we paid upfront for much of the kiosks and other equipment associated with this. So next year, we expect to be working with the consultant to develop a 3-year plan that will allow us to amortize out those costs so our expenses aren't as high. And then again, as I said, we're going to adjust the revenue side through the other items I mentioned. We are working on the new contract that's currently underway now and expect to have something that will be in front of council probably early in the new year. We want to get this program set up early this year rather than having to wait until May, June, July. And then again, any funds that do get reallocated will be based on council's direction from that previous meeting, and that will be coming back to council, I believe, at a future meeting. So maybe I'll just stop there. I said a lot of words and ask council if you have any questions about parking.
First, council, question for parking. I looked at the budget, this budget, and I looked at the previous budget, the projections, and I noted that the parking contract fees went from 128,000 projected through the next bunch of years to 280 for the beaches and 69,000 for downtown to 168. So that's an increase of well over 100%, $250,000. What happened there?
So there were errors in the financial plan, and so you're actually, what we're doing at this point is looking at apples to oranges. And so what I hope to do for council is bring forward a budget in the 24 to 28 updated budget at the next meeting to show that, and we can maybe dig into the error. So basically, we underestimated about 37% because we were using a formula from a previous financial plan that didn't account for a number of kiosks or how we apportioned which kiosks were there. So there was definitely an issue with the formula. So that
Is in the previous budgets.
in the previous budgets. And so we've spoken to Robbins about the downtown parking. The main issue when I dig down to the numbers is that we're just paying a fairly high rate for a 1-year contract. And so our other contracts, say for the beach parking, were extended over the 3-year program. And so allowed us our expenses to look fairly low over the year. This year, for the downtown parking, we paid heavily for getting it up and running for a 1-year contract. That will support us in the end because we're going to be entering into a longer term contract. So we're going to have absorbed a lot of that, a lot of those expenses now and be able to amortize the remaining expenses for those kiosks over the next 3 years.
But specifically besides, this is just the parking contract fees, not, so that was an error in the previous budgets by $250,000 and now it's being corrected. Is that what's happening?
There was an error in the previous budget. I'm not going to comment on what future ones until I can get those numbers, then I will come for council with something.
Okay, I just see it going out, it's 288,000 for the whole, every year for this budget.
Maybe I can just.
Yeah.
If I.
Yeah, sure.
So effectively what happened was in the previous adopted financial plan, there were errors in the formulas. I don't want to get too deep into like nitty gritty Excel discussions right now, but what you see in the current draft financial plan for 2024 to 2028 is the accurate cost estimates based on fixing those errors that we found. So the changes that are going to come forward at the next draft that Mr. Rogers are talking about is related to any reduction in fee or contract fees that we may see based on the new contract that he's working on, and any other additional adjustments to the budget based on the year to date or the end of the year actuals. So the increase that you're seeing or the change from the adopted financial plan to the current financial plan is strictly just fixing the errors that we found from.
So the Robbins parking actually did not get paid $200K, they got paid $450K. Is that what I'm hearing for the past?
So let me just take a look here.
You're probably, you're about $400,000 was 2023. There's 460 were our total expenses, but there's some other stuff.
So the previous one was wrong. And
the expenses was wrong. You know what this, so we underestimated the expenses by about 37% due to the errors in the formula for the downtown parking.
And beach parking.
Overall, yeah. So there's kind of two separate in the budget. So when you combine it there, so you end up just
37%, it just went from 69 to 168. That's.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I had the same issues you. I can't compare them because they're inaccurate in a sense. Things were in the wrong place. And so it was tough for me to be able to go back and do that. So I can stand here and say that's staff's error, but I can assure council that moving forward, the numbers that we're going to reflect at the next meeting, they're in there now, but will be updated for the next meeting based on the current contract that we're negotiating, will be accurate and items in the right place, and council will have an opportunity to decide if that's what we want to do first.
Okay.
I'm confident that we'll be able to get downtown parking back to where it's good, back to in the black. It's never going to be as much as down as beach parking. I worked it out. We're probably looking about half the total revenue once we get through this first year of contract. And yeah, so we may as well leave it at that. I would like to bring it back to the goals. So we had 3 goals.
To just suggest just quickly that I'll follow up via email to council on some actuals, just clarifying what we're talking about in this meeting. I'll follow up.
Great.
I do have the actuals here if you want to dig into them.
That's fine. I just wondered about that discrepancy, if it was a
Yeah,
counting error on the previous thing. That's too bad.
yes.
Carry on.
So just to get back to the goals of the program, we had three. One was ensure the availability of spaces in conversations with the contractor, members of the public, and my own observations. I think we met that goal. In terms of a mode shift was the second goal, kind of tougher to determine. And then third, the revenue for the downtown parking, we didn't meet that goal. So next year, we'll be looking at the same goals and working to adjust to bring that into a net positive for our revenue. Okay, any other questions about parking before I move on to Public Works operating?
Well, it's not really budget related. I'll just leave it.
No?
I'm just wondering if we're getting some data out of our parking. Out of the downtown parking implementation, like utilization of certain spots and stuff. As we go into it and start looking at maybe adjusting some of the details to make it better. We might look at some of those areas where people are parking, and I'm just wondering if we're getting any data collection out of our contract, I guess.
Getting anecdotal data. If we wanted, one of the questions that we're discussing right now in the contract is about data collection and how, if and whether we want to do that. Everything comes with a cost. I'm sensitive to the cost of those, so I will address that with the contractor through these discussions to try to get a price tag on it and see what that might look like in terms of how we can do that, or we undertake it ourselves, which we've done in the past using students to go out there and count numbers.
Okay.
I can say I received anecdotally I received very few complaints about paid parking programs here, and I didn't have people calling me saying I can't find a place to park. We did have obviously people who got tickets as well, but I'm just gonna write that down. So
Yeah, just given the different user groups and the, interest of businesses and stuff.
yeah,
As we look at maybe fine tuning it, it'd be good, whatever we have.
yeah, and I'm confident that we're going to be net. Where our revenues, looking at just where our revenues fell short this year and what happened in our expense situation and this new contract. Like I know that we're going to be in a positive. We weren't in the negative until very recently because of the shorter season. So if we had a longer parking season, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd have a conversation about, we maybe met our goals, but it's something that I know we can address. I'm confident about it, and I now have real numbers, so I understand what's happening in the downtown as far as parking. So we have real world data, but I will follow up with the contractor to see what we can do in terms of a little bit more detail.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go through three sections here. We're going to go through Public Works, Water, and Sewer, and we start with our operating budgets. Then we'll move into the projects, and we'll do that for each of the three items. The first item I'd like to address on this slide is the transfer from reserve, and we're going to see this in the two other slides about our operating budget. And basically, and I think this is just to reiterate what Ms. Bodner said earlier in the meeting, is that obviously this is transfer from our internal reserves into Public Works. It's not balanced at this point. What we will be doing is going back and looking at our projects, determining is there another fund that we can use this for, is there an available grant, or as a last resort, cutting projects and programs. And so this will likely look a lot different when it comes in front of council at the second meeting in January. The second item on here addressed is just, I guess, a good news story. We're going to have an extra $10,000 projected in our facilities and structures amalgamation of general ledger items, and that's due to increased fees at the community hall because the community hall is being used more now with our new staff up there and some of the small changes that we've made. And I'll just keep moving through until I'll pause after each item. And if you guys have, if council has any question, they can just please put up your hand and I'll answer it. In expenses, looking at the public works yard building, we see increases, percent change of 37%. That's related this year to increased maintenance of our buildings. We're seeing leaky windows, leaky roofs, and the addition of or the purchase of some new tools for the shop. The second item is our streets and sidewalks. We're seeing increased expenses in tree maintenance, tree removals, limbing, asphalt patching, and our winter maintenance program. And then finally, the third item I'd like to address here is the facilities and structures line item. We're seeing increases in our cemetery costs. We're seeing line being held at First Dock and Community Hall overall. And then we're seeing some increases at the stump dump in terms of our fill and closing that facility. So that is the end of the overview of this section. Would anybody like to discuss anything on this slide?
Actually, I have one question about fleet and equipment.
Sure.
I was looking through the budget on maintenance and repairs, and I had a specific question: is who does the repairs on our vehicles and generators, et cetera, et cetera?
Great question. So it's a mixed bag. So with some items, greasing a shovel or taking a shovel off to put a new one on, oftentimes our labor team or our public works team will do that type of work. They'll do minor maintenance, filling up oil, checking transmission fluid, those type of things, cleaning the vehicles. If it gets into more mechanical, then we're talking to either Long Beach Auto if they're available, or taking the vehicle out to Port Alberni for repair at a shop. And then anything, specialty or heavy duty equipment is generally we bring people into town where we can. Sometimes we have to ship the whole vehicle out. Sometimes with the flail mower had to go out and comes back. But anything large, either we'll bring someone in, they'll work on it in the yard, or it'll go out. Yeah. And then small tools will do a lot of the maintenance. And sometimes the laborers or the parks folks will start breaking down things somewhat, but it's generally we're taking that stuff out.
Is there a way to get a breakdown of that? I would like to see a breakdown of who does just the repair section. Yeah.
That would be a research project, but we don't record hours that way.
Oh, I got it.
So you work an 8-hour day. So
just generally, I'm not the.
I can ask
the contracted out mechanical repairs for vehicles.
Contracted out?
Well, like, Long Beach Auto or repair shop or heavy duty mechanic being brought in. I'd like to see those numbers.
Yeah, I think anything that we pay on an invoice should be fairly simple for me to pull forward. So I think
that's what that.
Okay. I was going to thinking about how many hours do you work on that more?
No.
Okay. No.
Just a simple line item of
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And I can take my heart out of my mouth because I'm talking to Eli about
how
many times these equipment it's heavy and light.
Engine repair from somebody else besides district employee.
Yeah, one interesting piece to say there, and we will talk a little bit later in I think maybe the next slide, is as we move to the enterprise contract for a light and medium duty, we'll be rotating in newer vehicles and we'll be holding onto them for fewer years. And so we expect that a lot of those warranty maintenance costs are going to go down over time because we're not holding on to a 15-year-old vehicle. So
yeah, perfect. I noticed that, but I noticed it was looking across, I was like, well, obviously something's going to change if you're leasing vehicles as opposed to having old vehicles you're sending out to Long Beach Auto or Port Alberni to repair.
Yeah, exactly.
So great.
Okay, so on the next slide. So I think like many of the other budgets of the district this year, we're seeing increased costs related to the purchase of materials and supplies. We're seeing increased repairs and maintenance expenses, such as our streetlights. So as we bring on asset management plans, or as our asset management team begins to review condition assessments and just infrastructure that's failing, we're finding things to fix. And so we're seeing increased repairs and maintenance there. The example of the streetlights are the streetlights all over the community, but primarily right now, the ones up Lone Cone Pfeiffer area, where we're seeing exposed wires, or have seen exposed wires for years. And now we're just at the point of starting to address those types of items. So as we turn over the rocks of asset management, we're going to be looking at, increased repairs each year for whatever it is that we're fixing that year. We'll be undergoing a subdivision and development bylaw review. This again, I think council is familiar with. It's sort of in concert with our utility rate review. This will be to do a 10-year update of our bylaw, make sure that we're aligned with our current practices, make sure that we're aligned with the equipment that we want to be using, and some technical updates from the engineering team. And finally, we'll be looking at DCC bylaw technical updates. We expect to have technical update for water done through the water master plan project, and then there'll be a second piece there where we deal with the front side, the bylaw side, what a developer would see. So fleet and equipment management, we're still negotiating with Enterprise on the contract. Once that's signed, it will be our asset management plan for our light and medium duty vehicles within the district, and allow us to look 10 years out, and definitely within 5 years in the length of time that our financial plans cover. And then what we're going to do on top of that as well is develop a 10-year plan for our heavy duty vehicles. So that's our backhoes, a flail mower, our mobile generators, and that'll be a plan. It'll be our first plan that we've done in-house for asset management, and those two will go together and inform future discussions about the CNI levy for the fleet and equipment portion of the CNI levy, to make sure that what we're requesting or requiring is accurate and matches up with what we're collecting from the CNI levy. Any questions here? The asset management program, its development continues. It's changing on a weekly basis. I hope to have the team present to council in the coming months a number of times, and explain at a employee level what's happening, and so how this information that we're collecting and the program that's being developed is actually impacting staff on the ground. And I think we have a great presentation I've seen twice now that the asset management team has given to our utilities team and to our parks team, explaining what their role in this process is and how it's going to integrate. And then as we move forward with asset management and this way of thinking, we're going to get away from presenting this to council as a project-based format and just incorporating asset management to our general operating budget, because it's just going to be the way that we do work in the District of Tofino. There may be a project here or there that we come to council for a specific asset management plan if it's significant, but most of this is going to be done in-house through our existing budgets. Okay, we're going to start in on the projects. The first project to present is the Mackenzie Beach Washroom. So this is a project for 2024, fully funded by Resort Municipality Initiative and our budget request of $350,000. It will fill in the eye of the loop at the end of Mackenzie Beach Road. Once the Mackenzie Beach Road project is completed, we're making changes in our Mackenzie Beach Road plan, or shouldn't say making changes. We'll be accommodating the installation of this washroom within the Mackenzie Beach Road. Community hall floor and roof replacement. This was originally presented, I believe, in the operating budget last year as repairs to the floor and the roof at the community hall, but undertaking a condition assessment of the facility, we're looking at we're replacing both the roof at the community hall and the floor at the community hall. We're hoping to do this through the CNI levy. And again, these are two projects that will extend the lifespan of that important community building.
That seems on the low side. Is it not a complete replacement of the roof or something
I understand the roof is a complete replacement of the shingles, like we're re-roofing it.
on the older part of the building?
Both the whole thing, I think they're gonna do from one side to the other side. And also the floor as well, which is significant cost, but this is what my team is telling me, so
No, I'm just carrying on.
oh,
But carry on with another question about this. I've had comments from the community that with the increased use of the community. There's comments, is there a possibility to refresh some of the other components as well, like adding windows and better sound baffling, some of the things that we've all noted for many, many years. And I know we don't have a balanced budget, but it seemed that we're very limited on these facilities. This is one of them. It's possible to add some more effort into that building, besides the roof and the floor.
great suggestion. I'll connect with Ms. Vermont and to discuss what we might want to look at in the upcoming years. I know we're working on some other improvements such as the kitchen as well, but maybe it's time to take a bit broader of a look at that facility. So
Thanks.
I'll take that note.
I have a question. I'd agree with Councillor Anderson that the roof costs seem a bit low, having seen an estimate for the Legion, which is at 100,000. I think the community hall is bigger than the Legion. And secondly, my question is, what kind of floor are we putting in? Is it going to be a non-slip floor? Just thinking of the sports that are played there.
We're going to be putting the same floor that's in there right now. So it'll be the same floor going back in.
Okay, that's good.
I'm going to want to say, and again, I hope I don't have to come back to council for this one, but we have worked with the roofing contractor. He's been up twice and looked at this. He's also working on other buildings. And part of when we originally budgeted this and it was repair, he came back and said, you need to do a full replacement. And we see that quote for him. So that's the background to it. I know here to check in with my team to update this to look at that question and then provide council with an update at the next meeting if that's acceptable to council. Okay, we're gonna move on to the Village Green Stairs. This project is to address the issue of the Village Green Stairs that are essentially located, that are not currently, but would be centrally located at the Village Green to access the crosswalk across Campbell Street. Right now, we have a situation where there's a desire line from people using the park to want to get to the crosswalk from the park. And so over the last 5 years, people have come down behind the piece of infrastructure we have there, the little concrete bench infrastructure, have come behind there and made their way to the road. In doing so, they've worn a path out that's now beginning to erode significantly. It's affecting the benches that we have there now. So it's cutting back on the retaining soils there, and as well as spilling gravel and dirt onto the sidewalk, causing hazard for people walking, as well as wearing away our concrete infrastructure. And so what we'd like to do is address this issue. We're a place that people obviously want to walk and develop a set of stairs there that match up with the aesthetic of the park. And so that's proposed to be funded from the CNI levy as well.
I'd like to ask for that 5-minute recess at this point.
Okay, let's do a 10-minute recess. So we'll reconvene at 11 o'clock.
Moving along, we're going to discuss our Net Road storm improvements. This was originally a 2023 project with a budget of $275,000. Funding source is from the CNI levy. This is to address an ongoing drainage issue along our Net Road that council has been presented on before. the budget increase is being proposed at $60,000, and that will come to council with a tender award and request for additional funds next Tuesday. We went to the market on this one early in 23, and we're getting quotes back in the range of about $600,000. And the reason we were trying to adjust this project was because we were in the ground anyways for the wastewater treatment plant conveyance, and we were trying to deal with a drainage issue at the same time. And in taking it out further into the market and discussing with some contractors, we've settled on this budget request, and council can expect a full report of this at the next meeting. The Olson Road Storm Main, I think this project has been with us for a number of years. We're still working with Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure on their contribution portion, a portion from reserves and a portion from CNI levy. And again, this would be to develop a storm drain down Olson Road that would allow the drainage that comes under the highway there to make its way to the ocean along a public right of way rather than private land. Yeah, the main change here is that we're doing this in 24. 4th Street upgrades. This project is a public works and a water main project. It is intended to be funded from CNI levy and roads. It would replace a water main from Gibson Street through to Malin Lane. Deal with the storm sewer situation there. So just probably making sure that the ditches and the culverts are up to snuff, and then developing a road or I should say in brackets, a sidewalk project along 4th Street from the intersection of Gibson Street to Malin Lane. So we have a continuous pedestrian facility from Campbell to the school, basically. It was approved in the previous plan. We're proposing a budget increase of about $100,000 due to the costs that we're seeing in the market.
Just a comment on this one. Now, this is from Campbell Street to Gibson.
Yes.
With the possibility of going further, I guess. Talked about it's in the report, but does it include a continuation of bicycling infrastructure? Because as I've chatted, there is no connection between the southbound bicycle lane on Campbell to the MUP. And really, there really isn't a significant MUP portion between 4th Street and out on Campbell. So, if you're going to do this, then perhaps I would like to see some kind of inclusion of a cycling lane so that people have the option of turning left onto Gibson from Campbell, going up and then matching up with the existing bike lane along Gibson down to back down to Campbell where there's a crosswalk. So it might be an easy win until we can get that section of MUP on Campbell Street actually up to snuff. So that's it.
Great suggestion. What I'll do is I'll connect after this meeting. I'll connect with our consulting engineers who've developed a plan for us, and I'll address this issue with them and to see what we might need to do, or if there's anything we need to do to be able to absorb them up along the sidewalk side of that, so people can make it down to 4th Street and then report back to council at the next meeting what that might look like and if it has any impacts to the budget as well. So
Great, appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next project, I think council has seen this before in the previous budget. This is a 2-year plan to replace our halogen lights with LED street light replacements. We're not proposing any changes. We just expect to get this underway next year and then finish it off in 2025. Fully funded by the local government climate action program. First Street dock improvements. This is a multi-year project, and likely you'll see as we move through financial plans in years to come, this will always be an item here. And its intent is to make sure that we're constantly maintaining the First Street dock so that we're not left with a large repair at any one time. We're going to be taking care of that facility. This is currently approved in the 23-27 financial plan, and we're not, the new timeline is we're just begin this in 24 rather than 23. In 23, we finished off a number of projects and we didn't have the space within our work plans to get the 23 projects done from this plan, but we will 24 to 28. I should also mention that these improvements are based on a condition assessment. So we did do a condition assessment of the dock last year, and we're given a condition assessment, which then had outlined items that need to be completed each year, such as replacing piling caps or undertaking inspections, painting, those types of things. Fully funded from C&I levy. Arnett Road Design and Construction. So this project is a number of years out. It's slated for 26 and 27. The caveat there is that this project has always been intended to come after the development of our indoor recreation facility. So it would take care of the portion of road from First Street to the community hall, ensuring that we had that section of the road had pedestrian cycling opportunities as well as parking if we can fit it in there. It would be designed probably in 26 and built in 27. These funding requests would be subject to change, but are based on what we understand we can plan for, but it really is contingent on that rec facility. Arnett Street design, this would be developing a design for Gibson Street from 4th Street to First Street with parking, multi-use path, sidewalks, and then in probably 28, 29, looking at construction. So again, still a number of years away there, but just wanted to make sure that's included in the financial plan, and we're thinking about items like this.
Just to comment on that for me, I know it's noted in the report or in the draft financial plan, but the importance of traffic calming and pedestrian priority. That section, just want to reiterate my support for that. Noting it as a school, as noted in the draft financial plan. I think that's extremely important for from what I hear.
Right. Okay, so we're now out of public works and into the water fund. I don't have anything to report on this slide at this time. Again, this may look a little bit different when we come back to council next year. There is that section that I described from my earlier slide, just about the transfers from reserve. In terms of this slide, I have a lot to discuss. So I'll start up at the pump stations. We're seeing increases in the pump station general ledger items due to increase in alarm monitoring. So we've installed better monitoring systems this year, as well as we're seeing just increased costs throughout throughout the water fund due to inflation and the cost of doing business these days. The second item I'd like to address is the reservoirs. The reservoir, we're seeing a significant increases primarily due to safety upgrades. And so we're actually going to talk about that in a number of the other items on this slide. As we start to do condition assessments and review what we have for infrastructure, we're noticing that there's some significant safety concerns in many of our facilities and our infrastructure, and understanding that human resources is a big part of asset management. We want to make sure that our teams are safe when they're working on or in these facilities. And so in the reservoirs next year, we're looking at Close Creek and the District of 117 reservoir, installing ladders, upgrading some protective coatings on ladders. At Bars Mountain, looking at the outside of that facility as well as the ladders, installing, and then as well as removing some rooftop components that have been up there for a number of years and are coming to end of life. So we have a situation at Bars Mountain on the old reservoir where we have a bunch of telemetry and batteries and a roof that's failing. And so we're looking at getting that addressed in the next couple of weeks. We made her aware of it this summer and we've been working towards that. So that we're seeing some increases due to that project, as well as an altitude valve at District, at the DL-117 reservoir. Under the water treatment line item, we're looking at upgrading attendees ladders and a platform at Bay Street, looking at finalizing our generator install that we installed during the emergency last year. As well, there is an increase in that line item. So in the water treatment line item for the hydro for the UV system for Bay Street, because that system's not installed, the cost of that increased hydro for the UV system for Bay Street may come out. So this again will be adjusted before council sees it again. In terms of water meters, that's basically related to a program, the increases we're seeing there, where we're going to proactively start replacing some of our larger meters, our fire flow meters and some backflow valves to ensure that our system is protected and safe from backflows. So one of the items that has not really been addressed in Tofino in the past is meters. So we put a meter in and we close the box and we forget about it unless there is an issue or there's a leak. We're going to start proactively replace those. Those will be recorded in the asset management plans and the programs and there'll be a bit of a system there. So this is what we're going to start next year with a fairly large meter at a resort. Number 5 was water projects. This one's actually going to come out of this plan. It was intended to be the upgrading of Lovekin Reservoir, which is a reservoir that's currently offline. We talked about it last summer during the water crisis as a potential for providing potable water to the community. The asset management team went on site, conducted a condition assessment, and came back with reports saying the cost of improving that plus the mechanics of trying to get people there and back is too much. We would be better served to purchase our own large plastic jugs for lower cost than it would be to repair that. So what council can expect to see instead in the coming years is probably a plan to remove that structure and be done with this. So it's not a liability to the district. But so I just want to say for this line item, when we come to council in the new year, that will be removed. And finally, the last item I want to address is water lines, which also includes our fire hydrants. And so one of our first projects in asset management was determining where our fire hydrants were when they were put in the ground, the value of them, and a maintenance schedule. So we're seeing an annual maintenance schedule, an annual maintenance cost per year of $40,000. That's an increase, as well as 2 hydrant replacements at a value of about $12,000. So that's where we're seeing increases there in water lines. There are a number of hydrants that are end of life. And so we'll be working with the asset management team and the utilities team to maintain what we can and then begin a program of replacing those hydrants as well. That's a lot there I've presented to council, so I'm happy to take any questions on the operating budget for the water fund.
I'd love to see the fund balance, actually. Is there a way to see that, or you could just tell us?
That would have to. Keegan.
Yes, pardon me?
Let them speak. The closed caption is blocking the.
Yes. Let's see. This.
So again, we expect this to be presented to council in a balanced fashion. When we come back, we'll be to remove both of those projects and then reviewing what we can and can't bring over from other reserves or potential last year's surplus to balance that.
Super, thanks.
Lost my clicker.
Oh,
Got it. Okay.
that's it.
I think it's just when your mouse is on the,
Right.
make sure the active user.
Yeah.
Stealing.
Took over control.
In the operating budget highlights, again, I think council is familiar with the rate review that's ongoing. That will have an impact on what this budget looks like for next year for sure. And then as well, we're doing a number of utility bylaw updates as presented to council at the last committee of the whole meeting which shouldn't change what I presented too much, but over the years, as the new bylaws start to take effect, sometimes we see a changes here and there. Generally, they're immaterial, but if there's anything large, I'll bring it forward to council.
Is now that we have one end of Neil Street looking really fun, is there any plans on continuing down Neil Street? Because the condition of the rest of the other block of Neil Street is more degraded looking now that we've improved part of the street.
I love this question. I walk that street often.
Anyways, something maybe for the next council term. It's yeah, and then even where we have improved it, there was some cuts in the pavement that are going to deteriorate. So I hope that's part of the patching program.
Got it. Maybe I can just say a couple high level things about Neil Street or that section of Neil Street. We replaced, I don't know, it was before my time in this role, but we replaced the water main there. And so that portion is done. So as we move forward with this 4th Street project, taking that note and making sure we're planning for a crosswalk there and figuring out what side of the road we're going to put a sidewalk on. If we're not going to do both sides, I'm assuming it'll be the same side that we have. So that makes sense. But yeah, addressing that in the 4th Street design, making sure that we're accommodating that, and then come back to council and I take a note as a potential project for years to come.
Another kind of question now that they've done some work on the liquid waste management project. Centennial Park has had an area redone there, and I'm just wondering, is there going to be sort of a little bit of an expansion to the park? It seems like there's more where they've installed some of the underground works for liquid waste management.
I don't believe it's in the contract. I don't think we talked to Parks about it at all, but maybe that's something to look at.
Yeah, the wastewater treatment plant will reinstate the park. They did have to take out a large tree to install sort of an underground tank, and I believe it has a hatch over top of it. But other than that, I think that area is just remediated with grass seed.
Maybe something to flag for Parks projects in the future if we've got some extra space.
Well, hopefully they'll put some lawn on top of it.
I have a comment on Centennial Park. I think it's kind of a no man's land and parkland where we put like the prison slide we've talked about before. The slide world. But suggest everybody go down it. But once. But maybe you know, Centennial Park would be a great it'd be a good time to look at a general master plan design for that park, noting that the population in that area is going to skyrocket. It will probably be used or the desire to use that is going to be increased. And right now it's really, you know, less than optimal.
Through the chair, there is a Parks, Trails, Recreation Master Plan planned, and that's a perfect opportunity to consider what the ultimate vision is for that park.
Great.
Not just a dumping ground of old structures.
It's much better than
It is much better than it used to. It used to be a lawn. Okay,
And good work. The slide was brief.
This project, from council is our first water project to discuss today. It would be fully funded from CNI levy. It would be to develop a road from Campbell Street down to our Bay Street pump station. There is a design that we've completed to a class C level, and we have again a cost estimate of about $400,000. If we would move forward, we'd have to bring this to a class A and then have to take it out for tender. The issues in that lot, I think everybody's familiar with it, but it's very steep and there's a lot of significant older forest there and large trees, and most of those trees, if not all, would have to be removed to get this road down. The issue is, for a number of years, we've been accessing, for a number of years, for decades, we've been accessing our pump station through private property, which is now for sale. And it's a private sale, so we won't probably find out about it until the day it happens. And so we're in a situation now where we literally don't have access to our prime pump station for the district. So this is a project that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. I have spoken to the engineers about the opportunity for space for housing as well. So there's an opportunity, there may be an opportunity there, but it's really going to depend what happens when we get into the ground. It would be an intent of the design to have some space available near the roadside for something for the Tofino Housing Corporation to take over.
Has there been any effort to reach out to property owners about their sale prospects?
I have not. We have phoned the number there to try to understand what's happening, but it sounds like the sale is being dealt with by someone else. And I think the owner might have passed, or one of the owners might have passed.
Is there a sale pending, or is it?
It's for private sale, so I don't know. We call to just try to figure out what's going on, but I don't have any good information for you. Bay Street water treatment upgrades. This project is, I think council is familiar with it. It is the installation of ultraviolet treatment system at the Bay Street pump station. So currently we treat with chlorine. We're required by law to treat with have two sources of treatment. It was decided a number of years ago that UV or ultraviolet technology is the best way to go. That would require, but it's about a $2.6 million project to put it in the existing building. We had thought about using some of the Growing Communities Fund as well as CNI levy to do this project. The interesting thing about this project is it actually the building that surrounds the current pump station. It's a wooden building from that's 30, 40 or 50 years old. It's not in great shape. And so their staff have some concerns about installing $2.6 million worth of infrastructure in a building that probably only has 10 or 15 years of life in it. We're concerned because the location of that Bay Street pump station would be in an area that if there was sea level rise, we would see inundation. And so prior to just pressing go on this, we want to make sure that we're looking at this in the context of our water master plan and figuring out what the best idea might be down here, rather than putting brand new infrastructure in something that we might not be able to use or might be looking elsewhere for water in the future. So it's in the program, it's the project sheet now. The caveat being, once we have the water master plan, we should have a better idea of whether this makes sense or not. As far as I understand, speaking of the province, as long as they're working towards this, they don't have any issues. That's doing what we're doing currently. So
I have a comment on this. I've already given you a heads up. Through this budget, this is probably one of the points that I think that I'm strongest about is I would like to see, approximately 50% of the Growing Communities Fund reserved for a potential rec facility. We're going to need that cash, and there's no reserve like the CNI levy, that I can see that we can pull from specifically for a rec center. So, and council, I don't think it's had a chance to discuss the use of the Growing Communities Fund until this point. So I would like to make that strong recommendation to council.
Yeah, well, we had discussed setting up a reserve fund at some point that could be used for recreation. capital capital projects. And that discussion came out of potential parking revenue. So I don't know where that sits with staff right now, if that's being developed or.
That, if I may, that reserve bylaw is coming to council on December 12th.
Okay, so I kind of hesitant just to pick a number 50% or any percentage really until we've sort of looked at it, looked at all the uses for it, because it's I don't know how to arrive at it either. It's maybe it's just arbitrary and based on how we feel about it. But that's my comments on it.
Sure.
We should establish the fund, and yes, we should put something into that out of this, so we have something to work with. We need to start that one, whether it's 50% of.
My rationale was that, we're gonna, if we get the grant, green inclusive building grant, we're still gonna be on the hook for $6 million or something. It's a hefty loan to go to the community. So, and our pay parking revenue is the projected pay parking revenue, which we did discuss, allocating a significant portion to the reserve, which I believe is coming up. That pay parking revenue looks to have decreased significantly as we.
In this implementation year.
Yeah, so then I was like, so my rationale is if we could come up with, if this growing communities fund is almost $2 million, if we could take $1 million, put it in the reserve, and sorry, this is a kind of conversation with council. So then if when we go to the community, we have a substantial amount in a reserve already, and to mitigate that ask from the community, as well as saying, hey, we've got a substantial amount of money in the bank, and now we're looking for donors to offset the any loans. So that was my rationale. Just to give you a back, that's what I came up with. Some kind of Councillor McMaster, CAO Setiana, and then Councillor McMaster. I'm not sure who was first, but we'll go.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to mention a couple things. So the parking reserve funds, I'm going to be bringing that forward to council, not on December 12th. It will be at the January meeting. That gives us an opportunity to have a more detailed discussion on the allocation, but just for council's reference, there's fairly clear direction from council on the pay parking program, and I'll speak to the Growing Communities Fund in a moment as well, that a minimum of 25% to recreation facilities by introducing a recreation facilities reserve fund bylaw. So I'll be bringing forward a bylaw that's consistent with that language. Just a reminder that council set minimums to those allocations. So staff will have to bring forward the surplus the surplus for pay parking every year, and council can make the decision on the exact percentage. Further to that, it's a minimum of 15% to the existing roads infrastructure reserve fund and a minimum of 10% to a pay parking reserve fund, which would have more flexibility, would have the ability to go back into pay parking infrastructure if it was needed, or have more flexibility for allocation on a year-to-year basis. And so with those minimums, there would certainly be those percentages, but council would have the ability to decide where the balance would go. With the Growing Communities Fund, we are required under the granting program to establish a reserve fund bylaw, and ensuring that any corresponding interest will be saved with those funds as well. And we will need to indicate in there how the funds will be allocated, and what we'll be doing is just listing the eligible use of funds and not restricting it to any particular place. for the purposes of this draft financial plan, staff had a look at where some of the challenges were in infrastructure, and we know that with the water master plan, there's going to be significantly more water projects coming forward to council, likely in the next draft or perhaps separate from that draft. And so we are challenged in this area with improving or going beyond renewals for water infrastructure. And so that's why staff look to this area in particular for allocation. But we're certainly open to further discussion on how we may want to utilize those funds. But in the absence of being able to access C&I levy for whatever portion of Growing Communities Fund is being proposed for this project, which is 100% of it, we'd have to look elsewhere outside of C&I levy to fund whatever that difference may be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McMaster.
Yeah, well, I look forward to further discussion, but with regards to the indoor recreation facility, the last time this came up, it's something I've supported for a long time. However, I did say it would be dependent on us getting the green infrastructure grant. And I said at the time that if we didn't get that grant, maybe we had to rethink our recreation plan and what we want to do with recreation. And I even mentioned pivoting towards a multiplex. So I'm reluctant at this stage to assign an arbitrary number from the Growing Communities Fund to the indoor recreation facility until we know the results of that grant.
Super. And just to clarify that my position was that we should reserve a significant amount of that Growing Communities Fund in case we get the recreation facility, in which case we'll need it. But then if we don't, then we still have a significant recreation deficit, as council is already aware and we've all talked about. And so that which traditionally it seems is really hard to fund through taxation. So that was my opinion. So I maintain my position. You still have a comment or question, Duncan? Councillor McMaster?
Okay. I'll go to further discussion. I mean, do we know when the results of this grant? We kept on being told November. We're now into December, and I don't expect a clear answer on that.
I'm sure we'll have it 5 minutes after staff know. Or maybe 2 minutes. All right, carry on. Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. For our next slide, we're looking at replacing our boat and trailer. As our team has grown out at the infrastructure and public works yard, we're often going over to the water system, or we're going over more often first off, and then we're often going over with more people and more equipment. We've been using a smaller sort of runabout boat for a number of years, and we would like to upgrade that boat to something that is more suited for what we actually use it for. And obviously that would be significantly safer than the boat that we have now. The intent would be to sell that boat, and that's that disposition piece in the funding source to help fund this. And so this would be, you know, one of the items council could expect to see in a heavy duty asset management plan, the heavy duty fleet asset management plan.
This one, it's a pretty big cost for, I think, for the amount we used the boat. Is there any chance of coming to some sort of we also need it when we need it. So is there any chance of coming to a lease agreement or something that we could
like in terms
contract whatever transportation when we need it?
Yeah, it's a possibility. It's I think exactly as you said, like when you need it, you need it. And so the other option would be to enter into a contract of, you know, a fee for service contract that would give us that that will allow us to do that. So someone willing to get up in the middle of the night to go look at it. Likely we're not going over at night. I can explore that further. I like the idea of us owning our own, it's, the Mears Island is a critical piece of our infrastructure, and being able to access it when we want and how we want is important to me, but I will spend some time to see if that service is available within Tofino and what that might look like for cost and what it might look like in terms of risk, but I'll bring that back to the asset management team.
How long has our vote lasted to, like, how long would this last, give us service for 20 years or 10 years?
I would imagine 20 years. I'm not sure what the age of the boat is. It's an aluminum boat, so it's got a relatively new motor on it and obviously serviced regularly. So I don't know when we last replaced it, but it's been there, I believe, as long as I've been at the district. So
There as long as I've been.
so yeah, going on like 100 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna just take that note. And I'll come back with a more fulsome answer at the next meeting. That's great. What trailer?
You have to have a special reserve just for the boat.
Well, luckily their C9 levy has, that's in our heavy equipment portion. I don't know if you've seen the crew go over, but with 4 fairly large individuals and that quite tiny boat, it's good for pictures for when it's serious. The Gibson Street Water Main project. So through the development of the conveyance system for the wastewater treatment plant project, we ran into some issues with this water main, working in and around it. It's pretty soft through here. It is identified in one of our condition assessments from the mid-2000s, mid-teens, mid-2000 teens, that it's needs replacement. And so we believe we can fund this fully through DCC water charges, which is great news. And because we're going to be looking at replacing the water main on 4th Street to Gibson Street at the same time, it seems like a project that could easily match up with that project. And we could and deal with the water issues we have in that area. SCADA integration. So as we bring on the wastewater treatment plant, we want to make sure that our current SCADA system can be integrated into the wastewater treatment plant SCADA system. Part of that is going to include relocating the entire program up into the wastewater treatment building itself. There'll be a new control room there with a proper server and better redundancy. So we need funds to help migrate that work within the current project sheets. So the project planning, so we had gone back and forth about the district's water master planning project. We haven't received our full reports yet. We expect to receive them in the coming weeks. And it's likely, I think as the CAO commented on, that we're going to see a number of new projects come forward for council's consideration. It may be just due to timing of receiving that plan and where we are, in our budget process, that it may be better to hold off on some of the majority of this to 2025. So we're not rushing to add new projects in. And again, these new projects wouldn't have been considered in the C&I levy and a number of our DCC bylaws. So we will be likely back to council at the next meeting with a fairly large outline of projects that we're going to need to do. But even though those will all be priority, we're going to have to prioritize the priority. We have to prioritize the priorities because there's obviously more projects than we have funds for. So just put that in your calendars that council can expect to see a number of projects proposed for the next budget cycle. Okay, sewer fund. The only item here that again, I just stress again, is just the transfer from reserve. We're not currently balanced yet, but we expect to be when we come back to council at the next meeting. This budget's a little bit closer than the water and public works budget. And so, we'll take this away and come back to council with some better information at the next meeting. In terms of expenses, I'd like to address lift stations. The lift station actually got cheaper at this point in the process. I looked through the line by line in a fair amount of detail, and it strikes me that the majority of those changes were seen from reduced insurance expenses. So that's great. And then sewer projects, obviously you can see quite a large increase there. That's primarily to do with inflow and infiltration inspections and investigations for our sewer system to make sure that we understand what's happening there as we begin to plan for our sewer modeling, our South Tofino Force Main projects, our upcoming municipal type servicing agreement with Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, and obviously the wastewater treatment plant. So we're expecting to do a fair amount more of those projects next year. And I think council can remember at the last meeting where the asset manager presented, they presented a picture of a sewer that was before it was cleaned and after it was cleaned. That's the type of thing we'll be doing, but looking for ingress of water. And it could be as easy as looking at manholes and as well as not just pipe eye, but looking down manholes to see what kind of water we're getting into the system. So obviously we're going to be looking at higher sewer charges or utility charges due to wastewater treatment operations in the coming years. And another interesting update is we expect to have a sanitary collection system model up and running next year. So in the same manner, we have a water model that tells us what's happening with our flows and our pressures in the conveyance system. We'll have the same for sanitary and be able to provide that to developers or engineers working for us as we begin to upgrade and maintain our current system. The South Tofino Force Main project. This hopefully, in the fullness of time, will be misnamed. So we're currently looking at twinning the Force Main from Maltby lift station to the Lynn Road lift station, as well as upgrading lift station 7, which is Lynn Road, and lift station 13, which is Maltby. We've undertaken the initial review of the program, or our consulting engineers have anyways, and we've determined that the actual diameter of the pipe is sufficient for flows probably going 20 or 30 years ahead of us. And so we actually have a situation where we have a pipe that actually may be right sized. The issue being what's being pumped in there now under pressure and understanding what the true flows are from Caystanis and Esawista. So we're now undertaking flow monitor. We'll be soon be undertaking flow monitoring, which will give us the information we need for this project as well as for our MTSA agreement, our MTSA. That's not an agreement, our MTSA, and also a potential review of the private stations that are pumping into our force main. So the good news is that we may be able to significantly reduce this cost and not twin the main. But if we have to, this is what this project looks like. Partly funded from DCC's contributions from the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, CNI levy, potentially a grant and general surplus. So no changes are being proposed at this point. I just wanted to let council know that work is ongoing and will likely bear some fruit in the coming months. The wastewater treatment plant, I won't go into detail here. I think Mr. Kirkland provided a pretty comprehensive overview at the Q3 meeting. Suffice to say, everything is moving forward according to schedule and hope to be completed by December 2024. And remaining budget and budgeting for next year will be confirmed probably at the next meeting. Another SCADA upgrade. So currently we have a system in Tofino where we have some of our lift stations that are attached to the SCADA system or are working under that SCADA system. And that allows us to see what's happening with the floats, to be alerted if there's a fault in the system, being able to control it remotely. But we have a number of systems that aren't. And as we start to put generators in these systems, we want to bring all lift stations online on the SCADA system. This will also help us with the overall operation of the wastewater treatment plant and the overall sewer system. Again, these would mean putting in controls into the individual stations and then connecting that back to the main control room and allowing our operators to operate from their phones or a laptop. This is one of the projects that, I think is important for a number of reasons, just the idea of a system that, that we have the whole system under control, but also for the human resources aspect of it. Our operators are often alerted to the lift stations that don't have SCADA through a light flashing. And that's the only way they find out about it. Being able to understand what's happening from your home at 3 o'clock in the morning before you get there helps you get the right equipment. It sometimes allows you to reset alarms without having to leave. So again, it's one of those items that supports the day-to-day, improving the day-to-day life of our on-call staff. And that's it from Public Works, Infrastructure and Other. I have notes here that I will take and get back to council with. I'm happy to take any other questions.
Questions, council? Councilman Knapser, get your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this was included in your water budget or whether it's in the sewer, but at a recent Tla-o-qui-aht council meeting, we discussed having a pilot project at 1 or 2 resorts to actually measure what was coming out of the resort as a comparison to what was actually going in a meter. Is that included in your budget?
Is not. So can I just confirm? So we were talking about what's coming out in terms of sewer and what's going in terms of water?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I specifically mentioned maybe we're going to choose a resort, we could use some of those that we knew had a well on the property.
Water.
Because I think this the pricing we use where we charge 90% of the water cost is probably a bit skewed.
Okay, I'm going to take that back to the team and I'll get back to you on what that might look like in terms of costs and potential, and then bring it forward to council.
Yeah, it wasn't agreed on upon council. It was just thrown out there, and a number of councillors thought it was a good idea. So I think we'd like to have an idea of the costs, and if it wasn't exorbitant, I think we should be doing it in the next budget cycle.
Okay, I will run that down with our consulting engineers and our team and get back to council.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Super.
Thank you.
I could have a 5-minute break. Sorry. I think we're just, go ahead.
So we'll go back to the outstanding items that council asked us to bring forward. So the Connective Support Society request for an increase in their annual contribution of $10,000, and then the Arts and Culture Grant increase to $40,000 annually. So let me just give a brief snapshot of the Connective Support Society request. Was delivered by John Horn, Executive Director. Directed this to council on December 5th of 22 regarding rent bank services to the region, and request of an annual contribution of $10,000 to support these services. So that council requested staff bring that back to the budget for consideration. And then secondly, we'd like a discussion on the Arts and Culture Grant request to increase that budget by $14,000 to an annual contribution of $40,000. And that grant, I'll just give a bit of background that was provided during that request. The rationale from the committee was as follows: that the grant amount has remained the same since the grant was established in 2013. 9 of the 11 previous years, the grant has been oversubscribed. Costs associated with program continuing to increase as seen in other sectors and no longer reflects the growth Tofino has seen in recent years. The committee would also like to see an increase to the maximum application request without reducing the number of organizations that could potentially be supported. And that while the financial impacts of these grants alone is relatively small in the scheme of things, the committee noted the importance of this funding in allowing organizations to leverage greater funds from the provincial, federal, and private funders. Without it, many would be unable to show community support that is typically required of these funders. So we're looking for council's direction in terms of supporting these items in the next budget draft. Further guidance.
Super. Go ahead, Ms.
A
Wall.
quick question through the chair to Ms. Bodnar. Is there a subsequent slide regarding the request to increase the event support grants as well?
There is not.
Okay. So that was another one that was referred to the budget process, was to increase the event support grants. And I have to dig up, was it?
It was a similar value.
Similar value.
40,000. What's the existing grant for arts and culture?
26.
And then there's also the council grants that are at 20, same amount or something. So I don't know, there's been no request to up that, but it's kind of in the same position as these other ones. They were established at the same time, haven't been seen increases. Anyways,
Council.
thoughts on this, I'll just throw them out there now. Is that, yeah, we should go ahead with, but maybe not all in 1 year. We should increase it over 3 to 5 year period to get it to 40,000, and then maybe look at a way of an inflationary increase after that to kind of keep up, so it doesn't get to the point where we're looking at a big jump in 1 year, something like that. And then yeah, do we need 3 streams of grants too? Is the other thing. Maybe we could broaden or combine arts and culture with council grants. I can't remember exactly, but you know how they're different, but we have the same bodies applying to both sometimes. So maybe we could make one bigger grant stream larger, have more applicants and be able to apply for more is another thought. I don't know. I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I'm just thinking of creative ways of redesigning the grant structure. Maybe it should go to staff for a report or something. My thoughts are there.
On the round table?
Well, I see hands up, so
Okay.
but I think that you're writing seriously. So
Well, I am, and I'm just trying to, my body's still physically getting back to here. Yeah, I was just, if there was, and thank you, Councilor Anderson. The 3 streams of grants that we currently have, is there a total value that you'd be able to have in front of you and be able to relate to us?
Thank you, Councillor Steer. So council grants currently sits at a balance of $26,000. The arts and culture grants is also at a balance of $26,000. And I don't have the balance of the RMI funded event council grant.
Through the chair, I believe it's 30,000 annually, and that was recently increased through the latest resort development strategy from 20.
30. And that's through the RMI.
And that's fully funded by RMI.
Correct. And so, and just to add another component in there that the council may not be aware of, the ACRD also, which we contribute to, also has a granting program of which some of the organizations in that apply for those same ones actually have access to and are often funded through the ACRD's grant funding process as well. I can't give you totals, but it is significant and something that should also be considered when we have conversations around our. So as it stands in terms of the direct taxation contribution to the grants is roughly about just over $50,000 then.
That's correct, 52,000.
52,000, thank you.
Just a question, we're right now, we're looking at with this unbalanced budget. What is the, if all things were to stay the same, what is the base increase? Is 4.5%? Is that what it is?
4.08% currently standard.
0.08. And these increases to the rent bank, what percentage of the overall is that? It's like $25,000, something like that. $4,000.
So we've got the 14,000 for the arts and culture grant increase, and then the 10, so 24,000.
Okay. Just gonna like put everything in perspective and
Sure.
not spend too much time on this. The larger grant scheme of things, this is we got a huge budget. Comments on the rent bank?
Sorry, what do you mean by rent bank?
That was the Connective Support Society that, yeah.
At the time, we all voted unanimously to bring it to this.
Yeah, I didn't hear a lot of support for it. It seemed like it was more of like, let's talk about it in the budget meeting. Does anybody have a position on the rent bank? I seem to think maybe we're covering affordable housing through the THC and through development. That maybe the rent bank would be appropriate in larger urban centers or other centers, but maybe not so much here. But that would be my opinion. So
I'd support that as well.
Any contribution from the regional district?
There is, yeah.
to the rent bank, is it utilized?
I haven't had the report, but there was a presentation from the same society too. And then there is I can't remember how much, but there was a conversation around the amount, but I don't remember off the top of my head, but there is a contribution from the NCR.
So we're contributing through that in a sense already.
Yeah, it depends on the way that I can't remember if it was through the grant structure, and if it is, it's somewhat complex in terms of how the grants are divvied out in terms of who contributes to which piece. So I don't know how much directly to Tofino would, but certainly if there potentially could be a contribution from us already through the ACRD.
Sorry to turn this into a conversation, but one more question on that. Can residents of Tofino access the fund through the ACRD contribution?
I wouldn't be able to answer off the top of my head.
Well, we don't have to make any decisions now. This is a draft, so I don't hear a huge amount of support, but I don't hear any. Let's just not support it completely. So
I would move that at this point in time, and coming a little late into the game, but certainly recognizing, hearing that we need to balance our budget and some of the increases, the base increase of historically has been not as high as 4. I'd be looking at ways to look at lowering our budget requests. So I would be in support of, in this fiscal year, not to be supporting the Connective Support Society. As much as I appreciate the work that they do.
counter comments from council? I see none. So that's not a lot of support. Base increase, arts and culture to 40,000. I kind of like Councillor Anderson's approach. Looks like there's a requested 14,000 increase. Maybe we could do 5,000 a year until we reach optimal. I don't know. I'm in support anyway. And it's such a low number, really, on the grand scheme of things, and arts and culture are quite important. So I think our community benefits regardless.
I hear more feedback about whatever support from the community for the grants than I do about rent bank. So it's definitely on minds of people, and it's well, just sort of.
I had to start aside the suggestion of the incremental increase over time so that we're not front loading here. Once again, respecting the fact that the budget requests are getting higher every year, and we have to look at ways that we can spread that out over time.
Well, I propose we increase it 7,000 for 2024, 7,000 for 2025, and then. Oh, sorry, Councillor McMaster.
Yeah, I support an incremental increase, but I think that should apply to the council grants as well. Don't think we should leave them behind. And then I also support Councillor Anderson in the fact that we should have staff look at combining the council and arts and culture grants into one grant fund sometime in the future.
Be a comment from staff what that would mean, because I know we just did strike some changes to our council granting process.
Through the chair, currently the arts and culture grants and the event support grants are evaluated by the each committee and a recommendation made to council, whereas the council grants are evaluated by, correct me if I'm wrong, standing committee, strike committee, standing committee of council. So the evaluation processes are different.
Different committees. CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I've reviewed these grants several times and the policies differ significantly. The council grants versus the arts and culture grants have two very different purposes. The council grants are often an extension of a municipal type service and is, available to the broader community in the absence of us providing something that may be similar. The arts and culture grants are specific to arts and culture. So we have looked at combining them in the past, but given the purposes are quite different, I wouldn't recommend referring this to staff at this time.
Super, I agree.
Thanks for that clarity on it.
Then I have a proposal. We've got a projected a request for 14,000 increase. I suggest we do 7,000 2024, 7,000 2025, and we also increase but I think we're going to talk about because we've had a discussion about the council grants and it hasn't made it into this draft plan. Will that show up in the next iteration?
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding inflationary impacts?
We talked about council grants, inflationary impacts, travel.
Yes.
Etc.
Yes.
That's going to show up in the next draft?
Correct.
Well, let's discuss it then. So for this one, we have in front of us a simple question. No rent bank contribution, 50%. So my proposal is 50% increase in 2024 of the proposed, so 7,000 2024, 7,000 2025 till we get to our optimal, and then maybe we'll come up with some kind of inflationary increase. Capped inflationary increase. Sound good? Council?
Yeah, I think that's a good ballpark. Maybe we'll leave it with staff to finalize those numbers.
Sure.
Yeah. Would that make, in case there's a different suggestion? More in 1 year.
Sure. Okay. I think it's council's clear. They want to support it and
increase it.
Increases. Okay. Ms. Vermont.
If I may, through the chair, council wants to consider the RMI event support grants. So there was a request to increase that to 40,000 as well. And I need to correct myself. It was 25,000 was allocated in 2023 for those.
The RMI, and that comes from RMI.
It's fully funded by RMI.
Well, then I propose we treat all the grants the same. In that case, I think it would be to 40,000, so it would be, 7,500.
Fair enough.
Right. I would just be a little more comfortable with RMI since this doesn't come straight out of taxation. It comes out of our RMI funding. I'd be happy with going to the I think it was a proposed increase to 40. I can't remember.
Correct.
That was correct. Thank you. I'd be comfortable going to 40. It doesn't affect our taxation component.
Does it affect other RMI programs?
Through the chair, the RMI funding, we receive a fixed base amount. 2024 will be the last year of the current resort development strategy. So those funds are, we're certain of those. Going into 2025 and beyond, we don't know what the program will look like. The event policy is clear that the funding is always subject to the RMI funding being available. So if we were to go to 40, it would still be subject to that funding being available. And as we enter a new resort development strategy or develop new resort development strategy, you know, the province may change the parameters around the funding. So we'll just something we'll have to be aware of and would have to amend the policy if that were the case.
I'm fine with that. Great, staff have direction.
So just to clarify, then the RMI event, we would increase that fully from 25 to 40,000 in 2024.
Sure.
Okay.
Staff, council?
Yeah, that's great.
Great.
It'll make the supporters of the other grant streams jealous.
Well, I think it's still fairly generous.
It's okay. We all benefit.
Thank you, council. That is all for our operating budget presentation.
Do we have, you've got up there growing communities fund allocation? That up for discussion now?
I apologize. We did have conversation prior to this. To clarify, CAO Atiana mentioned that, I apologize. Gotta go back in memory. The Bay Street water project, UV upgrades, we were going to look at the structure for that. And I get Mr. Rogers, we were going to maybe bring that back at another budget meeting, and was that correct?
Yeah.
CAO is going to hand up. Sorry, I thought we had a zoom on that one.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to suggest a way forward for this one. I think that staff heard council that we should have a look at some other funding sources for Bay Street. There is some uncertainty around that project, as Mr. Rogers mentioned during his presentation. So we'll take away that project, and in the second draft of the financial plan, we'll consider some other funding sources for it. I think the staff heard you as well, council, regarding an emphasis on recreation. When I bring forward the reserve fund bylaw, it will include all eligible uses of funds under the granting program. It won't restrict it to water infrastructure or anything like that. So there'll continue to be flexibility around decision making when it comes to utilizing these funds. So for now, we'll bring forward transferring into reserve. In the second draft, this will likely look a bit different.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We have now, we've got closed session, I believe. Is that that's it for the open session? Is it?
Yes, it is, Mayor Law. I was just going to mention that we've got the upcoming budget town hall on December 13th, starting at 6 p.m. And then we're planning our next special budget meeting, or the second draft, on February 15th of 2024. And that is it.
Super. When is lunch?
Right.
Right now? Let's go, let's break for lunch. Recess for lunch. Reconvene. People want a half hour? Half hour sufficient? 30 minutes? All right, let's reconvene at 1:45. Okay, so we actually have a question period. So we'll reconvene from lunch. Mr. McCall, do we have anybody signed up for question period?
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now do an open call for questions from the public. If there are anyone online via Zoom wishing to ask a question, say your name, your address, and the agenda item you're referring to. I'll now do an open call, going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no current questions at this time.
Super, then I'll move into the closed session from the chair. Move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to discuss matters relating to 1A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. 1C, labor relations or other employee relations. 1L, discussions with the municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purpose of preparing an annual report under section 88, annual municipal report. Seconder. Steer, all in favor? Super. Now we're moving into close.